back. Okay. All right. Order in the court, please. The court appreciates your returning on time, and we are on schedule, and we'll finish with the witnesses and in plenty of time to hear from President Truman himself. So at this time, does the defense have their next witness?
We'd like to call the widow of Pearl Harbor.
Who? Is the widow of
Pearl Harbor?
U.S. Navy officer Pearl Harbor? Yes, she is here. Please approach the bench. I remind all witnesses that you are still under oath. As well, I remind the combo class that you should be taking a few notes for each character so you remember the key arguments. Defense your witness.
Who are you? My name is Sarah Macbeth, and I lost my husband when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 5 years ago.
I know this must be a painful question to ask, but how do you feel about the loss of your husband?
I'm very lost and devastated. My husband was an innocent man, and he had no reason to get murdered. We would have been married 9 years as of today, but no, he was taken from me. But I'm not the only one who also lost someone.
How do you feel about the Japanese army who did this bombing of Pearl Harbor?
I feel hatred towards the Japanese army, but not the people, just their army. And I can never forgive them for what they did.
Can you tell the jury, and I suppose the prosecution as well, what you experienced during this horrendous bombing?
Well, it started out early in the morning. My husband had left for work, and I had gone up to go see some sights.
Is this because you're a photographer, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, continue.
What I saw was very shocking and horrendous. It was...
Order in the court, please.
I was so shocked and paralyzed in fear. I couldn't move. It was definitely a hell, what I saw. People trying and just running.
Do you think President Truman made the right choice by dropping the bombs?
I think so, yes. It ended a lot of things that were going on that needed to be ended.
We're sorry we had to question you during such a terrible time in your life. Thank you.
Would you care to cross-examine the widow of the Navy officer at Pearl Harbor?
Hello, I'm really sorry that we have to question you under these circumstances. As I understand your terrible loss, I've had family members that I lost too in the war, so I share your pain at this moment. And do tell me, did you have children?
No.
Okay. And you said your husband was killed at the attack of Pearl Harbor, correct?
Yes, while he was at work.
Okay. And he was in the military, correct?
Navy.
Okay. Do you know how many civilians were killed in Pearl Harbor?
Almost 2,000.
Civilians, not in general, just the civilians.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, there were only 68 civilians killed in Pearl Harbor, not including military. Do you know how many civilians were killed from the 2 American bombs in Japan?
Objection. This is, well, first thing, it's immaterial because this witness wouldn't have any knowledge of
Yes,
what
I'll
was
sustain the objection. Next
Okay.
question.
I was just wondering because I'm leading to a point. In Pearl Harbor, a total of 2,000 some people were killed, of which only 68 were civilians, as opposed to 214,000 civilians that were killed in Japan. Is this correct? You know, as far as you know.
Yes.
Okay. And do you realize that this attack, the attack on Pearl Harbor, was 3,147 times smaller than that of Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined?
Yes. But the attack was unexpected.
Yes, I realize that. And also, when in the military, there's always some sort of risk, isn't there?
Yes.
And he loved his job, didn't he? He loved what he did. And you realize that although he was in the military, unexpected things like this happen, and there isn't always a warning. And do you agree that to some extent, not completely and not, I'm not accusing you of anything, but to some extent, don't you think that you lean towards the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki correct because you lost a loved one? Okay, I'm sorry. Do you think the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, you believe it was necessary and it's a good thing?
Yes.
But don't you think that you're a little biased at this moment because of the loved one you've lost to some extent?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, and
One more question, please.
sure. Do you believe that your husband would do it all over again, going to the military for his family and for his country, for the love of those things? Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Your next witness,
We'd like to call Robert Oppenheimer to the stand, please.
to Robert Oppenheimer.
Dr. J.R. Oppenheimer, will you please introduce yourself?
I'm Dr. J.R. Oppenheimer. I was born in 1904 in New York. I studied physics and chemistry at Harvard University as well as different cultures. Then I went on to Cambridge University and got my PhD in University of Göttingen in Germany. In 1929, I came back to America as a professor of quantum physics in the University of California and California Institute of Technology. In 1942, I was appointed scientific director of the Manhattan Project by General Leslie Groves. And I got extremely motivated, completing the first atomic bomb by July 1945, together with a group of the best scientific minds in the country. After 1945, I returned to being a professor and a physicist, which I still am up to today as we speak. And I'm here for I supported the dropping of the 2 atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Dr. Oppenheimer, what was the Manhattan Project and what were its goals?
The Manhattan Project was a project in which research was done on the atomic energy and quantum physics by me and a group of the best scientific minds in the country, which I helped select. The Manhattan Project was a project to develop the first nuclear weapon, or also known as the atomic bomb. This project was a measure which absolutely needed to be taken by the United States in response to information that Nazi Germany had already started efforts towards building an atomic bomb. If Germany would accomplish building an atomic bomb, there is no doubt they would use it, having immense and disastrous results on every single person on this planet. The Manhattan Project was a race against Germany in building an atomic weapon. Thus, the main purpose of the project was to promote world peace and safety of all countries, as well as prevent future wars and save human lives.
After Germany gave up on May 7, 1945, why did you continue working on the atomic bomb?
When you see something that is technically sweet, you go ahead and do it, and you argue about what to do about it only after you've had your technical success. After Germany surrendered, there was still a war going on between us, the United States and Japan, a war which we hadn't started. At the same time, Japan was also working on an atomic bomb, as outlined by the FGO program, and they had proved as well stated that death was the only honorable way to go. Surrender was considered a sin, and it brought shame to your whole family. Personally, I was caught up in the project and the incredible and significant discoveries that were made. And I think every scientist in the Manhattan Project there was a momentum to the whole thing. Taking into consideration the moral of the Japanese, The building of the atomic bomb continued rather so as to try and put an end to the war, rather and not to kill people.
So, Dr. J.R. Oppenheimer, was Truman justified for using the atomic bomb?
Definitely. He saved millions of lives, American as well as Japanese civilians and soldiers. The Japanese Emperor Hirohito did not respect the lives of his citizens. He ordered children to strap themselves with TNT and throw themselves under American tanks. There is no doubt that Truman is a hero. He ended the war, a war that the Japanese had started, and he saved millions of lives and protected his country as his duty was. He's our savior, for sure.
Thank you, Dr. Oppenheimer. That will be all.
Do you wish to cross-examine this witness?
Hello, Mr. Oppenheimer.
Hello.
So, did you know about the radiation, the health problems, and the height in which the atomic bomb would rise?
To a certain extent, yes.
So, yes or no?
To a certain extent, not to a full extent.
Okay, can we have evidence too? Okay, so this is a memorandum from you to General Farrell on May 11th, and you're talking that you're saying that the bomb is toxic. You're saying also that there is radiation, and also you're talking about the height of the bomb. So you knew it.
About the
Height.
height, yes.
Yes. Okay. So in another recommendation of the inmates' use of nuclear weapons on July 16th, you stated that the bomb would be a military use, that it would be only acceptable, not acceptable alternative to direct military use. So you're talking about the military use, that you would only use it.
For military, yes.
Okay. But in this case, it's not a military use. Well, civilians are killed. Is that correct?
The target was industrial. It wasn't, as I said, we weren't targeting to kill people. We were targeting to end the war, which Japan had started.
Yeah.
We wanted to save lives, which...
Okay. But I'm asking you if it was not a
Objection.
military base.
This is argumentative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain the objection because I'm not sure that this witness would have specific information about
He's the one who wrote it.
these specific targets.
Yeah. He was the one who said that we can see no acceptable alternative to direct military use. That he would use.
No, I'm talking about with regard to the targets selected at
Yeah.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm not sure that this witness would have specific information about that.
He knew about that it was an industrial base, and but in this case, you're in the defense. You're in the defense,
Yes,
right?
I am.
Okay, and you know that many people were killed.
Yes, I do.
So it is a contradiction to what you had stated
What had I stated? Could you
about the
please-
military use.
Yes, it was military use because we were targeting to end the war. We were targeting to
But
destroy
civilians are
industrial.
killed. Civilians are killed.
That was not our goal, though. There was a military goal. A military
But you're in
goal
the
to
defense
destroy.
now. You're in the defense
Yes,
now.
I'm in the defense, indeed.
Okay. So also, are you a member of the interim committee?
I think so, yes.
You think
Yes,
so?
Yes, yes. yes.
Okay. So on June 1st, 1945, there was a recommendation, and you were part of it, that it should be used on a dual target plant surrounded by or adjacent to houses and other buildings most accessible to damage.
That was so as to bring down the Japanese morale so that the war would end. Thus, indeed, again, a military use.
Yeah, but I didn't ask you something.
Please ask your question.
Okay, so here you're stating that you would, because you're talking about buildings and houses where people are living.
Yes.
Okay, so it was not a military base as you had stated before in your previous statement.
It was. The center had industrial.
Okay, but here there's a recommendation that you were part of. It says that you would use the bomb in adjacent to houses.
Yes, as I repeated, to bring down the Japanese morale. The Japanese were not ready to surrender. Our military target was to end the war.
Okay, but houses where people live is not a military base.
The center was surrounded by houses.
Do you have any further questions?
Yeah. Okay.
1 minute left.
Okay. So, Mr. Oppenheimer, do you know the difference between plutonium and uranium?
Between?
Plutonium and uranium.
To a certain extent.
What do you mean to a certain extent? Do you know the difference
That
between
wasn't
them?
my specialty.
But you're a scientist, aren't you?
I'm a scientist, but that was not my...
And you're part of the Manhattan Project, and the
Objection.
bombs
Yes,
were
but
made
I
of...
wasn't
Objection.
researching.
Why?
This is immaterial.
Get to your point, please. What
Okay.
would you like to make about that
I
point?
just wanted to ask him if he knew the difference between plutonium and uranium that were used in the bombs.
To a small extent, potassium wasn't my... I wasn't researching on that. I was directing the whole project. I was tackling general problems.
Okay, but you didn't know what was the bomb made of. You knew, right?
I did, the splitting of the uranium.
Okay, so you know the difference between plutonium and uranium.
Yes, to a small extent, yes.
What do you mean
Get
to
to your,
small?
get to your point.
I'm
please.
saying
What
I'm
is the
not
point of your question?
specialized in
Order,
this.
But if-
order, wait.
okay,
What
but-
is the point of your
Okay,
question?
so if you're a scientist, you're supposed to know that.
Okay.
Yes, what is the point of your question?
My point is that if he's saying that he knows to a small extent. This is not an answer of a scientist.
Okay, thank you. Your question is over. You may be seated. Your next question, please.
We'd like to
Your next
call.
witness.
We'd like to call Sir Paget Thompson to the stand.
Yes, your witness.
Who are you? What is your profession? And why were you called as a witness in court?
My name is George Paget Thompson, and I'm a British physicist and Nobel laureate. I'm credited as a discoverer of the subatomic particle known as the electron, for which I received the Nobel Prize in 1937. In 1940, I was selected to be the chairman of the MAUD committee. I was called to court due to my involvement in the creation of the atomic bomb.
What was the MAUD committee and what was its goal?
The Military Administration of Uranium Detonation Committee was a project launched by the British government. It included the British leaders of particle physics of the time. Its goal was purely to investigate and develop the use of the recently discovered uranium fission into usable resources, predominantly military hardware. In 1942, we joined the Manhattan Project in order to accelerate our progress. The experiments conducted were completely responsibly and professionally arranged, coordinated in order to achieve our ultimate goal of quickly and efficiently ending the ongoing war.
Assume your knowledge of the full effects of atomic weapons. Why did you participate in the MAUD committee?
We were all fully aware of the capabilities of such an invention, but throughout the past years, the witness effects of this devastating war made us realize that this war had to be ended as quickly as possible, preventing more compiling deaths to the unbearable number of civilian and soldier losses. I personally served in the Great War of 1914 in the British artillery and witnessed the atrocities firsthand. Judging by the rapid accelerating weapon technology, I quickly realized that an abrupt end was a necessity, which indeed was the only goal of the MAUD committee. Regardless of the advances in weapon technology, the use of close man-to-man encounter would still be mandatory if any other weapon choice would be considered. And due to the worldwide criticized zealousness and cold-blooded ambition of the Japanese, effective military advance was not a realistic choice. Atomic weaponry was indeed the only efficient weapon to counter and lower the threatening Japanese morale. The negative perspective of unconditional surrender is an eminent factor of Japanese culture, which certainly resulted to this last resort option. I'm convinced that President Truman noted similar points before making the final decision.
Thank you.
Your witness, please.
So, Mr. Thompson, did you know the reason that the United States, in contact with the British scientists, created the atomic bombs?
Yes,
What was it?
to produce the atomic bomb as quickly as possible by utilizing the elite physicists of the time.
Okay, and what was the reason that the United States wanted to use it in contact with you?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, you were contacted with United States, right?
Yes,
Okay, so do you know the reason that the United States would use it?
yes, to produce atomic bomb using British scientists and their knowledge.
And what was the purpose of the bomb?
To efficiently and rapidly end the war.
Okay. Okay, what is the bomb's main element?
Uranium.
Okay. And do you know the effects of uranium
Yes,
to people?
yes.
Okay, and what are they?
Well, uranium, an atomic bomb, when detonated, it causes a great blast, including radioactivity.
Okay. And do you know the damage to people?
Yes.
Okay, what is it?
Excuse me, can you?
What is it? What?
It's destructive. It's yeah.
Okay. And people are going to be killed.
Yes.
Okay. So, did you share information about the long-term effects to the people and nature with the United States?
Yeah, we were aware of the consequences.
Okay, and you shared them with America?
Objection is
Yes.
incompetent because he's not a scientist.
I'm going to sustain the objection because we're only 5 years out, and long-term effects as well. This is a very
Okay.
short-term amount of time to understand
Okay.
the effects. So ask your next question, please.
Okay. And in contact with the United States, you informed them about the bomb.
Yes.
Okay, no further question.
You may be seated.
We'd like to call to the stand former American President Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
President
We
Roosevelt,
require some assistance.
5 years to this day you died. We're glad you came back. Careful. He has horrible polio. Thank you for making it out of your grave.
You're welcome.
Your witness.
Who are you and how are you affiliated with the bomb?
I am the former President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and I died 5 years ago. And I helped develop the idea of the atomic bomb.
What is your opinion on the atomic bomb?
I believe the atomic bomb was necessary in order to save lives.
Why did you develop the droppings of the atomic bombs?
First, it was for the competition between the other countries about who can develop the atomic bomb first. Also, when it was created, we were using it as an intimidation to the Japanese. The intimidation didn't work, but the bomb was ready to be used if needed.
In your opinion, how did the bombing help the cause of the war?
I believe that the bombing helped to end a war. Historian Dakichi Irokawa once stated, immediately after the defeat, some estimated that 10 million people were likely to starve to death. This would have been the case if the bombs weren't dropped. Therefore, the nuclear bombing was justified because it ended the war quickly, which saved millions from starvation and firebombing.
If you were still alive, would you have made the same decision about dropping the atomic bombs?
Yes, because intimidation didn't work and they weren't willing to surrender after many days since they were warned.
What would you have thought of Truman if he didn't drop the bomb?
I would think of him as a worthless president for not protecting his country like he should. Both Americans and Japanese lives would have been lost due to a probable invasion by the Japanese.
Prosecution, your witness.
Mr. Roosevelt,
Yes,
you had appointed Truman as your vice president, correct?
yes.
And you never told him about the Manhattan Project. Was it because he was inexperienced, or why?
No,
Why did you
we
not
were
tell him?
keeping it secret.
So you thought it would be a secret of national interest. You knew that he would come up to your seat one day and he would know nothing about an atomic bomb.
I was going to tell him. just not right away.
Objection, that's speculation. He never knew that he would come.
Fine, your next question.
Okay. And don't you think the Manhattan Project, a scientific marvel, was completed in 3 years? Isn't that true?
Yes.
Yes. Don't you think the project went miraculously fast?
I guess so, but it was for a good cause.
So yes.
Yes.
Yes. So is it possible that such a speed didn't allow enough time to analyze other hidden costs, such as radiation?
It didn't matter at the time. We were preparing just in case.
Pardon?
We were preparing just in case if the Japanese were to do anything to us.
I know. So you were using it only for self-defense, but
Yes.
in the end you actually bombed them.
Yes.
Okay. Were you ever in a position to end the war?
No.
Your Honor, she's lying. Can I have evidence number 5? Yes. This is the Cairo Communique in January 1944. I would like you to read the highlighted portion. Take your time.
The three great allies are fighting this war to restrain and punish the aggression of Japan. They covet no gain for themselves and have no thought of territorial expansion. It is their purpose that Japan shall be stripped of all the islands in the Pacific which she has seized or occupied since the beginning of the First World War in 1914, and that all the territories Japan has stolen from the Chinese, such as Manchuria, Formosa, and the Picadores, shall be restored to the Republic of China. Japan will also be expelled from all the other territories which she has taken by violence and greed. The aforesaid three great powers, mindful of the enslavement of the people of Korea, are determined that in due course Korea shall become free and independent.
So this is 1 year before, and this is this is your goal in the war, right? You
Yes.
can't say no. On the right is the Japanese offering, which you received from General MacArthur, a 40-page communication that Mr. David talked about before. And some overtures are over there. Can you read them too?
This. Full surrender of all Jap forces on sea and the air, at home, on island possessions and in occupied countries. Surrender of all arms and munitions. Jap relinquishment from Manchuria, Korea, and Formosa, as well as all territories seized during the war, and 4 other overtures.
So you were in a position to end the war, yes?
I guess so.
Yes. And how are these proposed over here any different from what you aimed?
Because we were only we were only self-defending ourselves.
Yes, and they were ready to give up all their territory.
Objection. She wasn't alive.
Yeah.
She wasn't alive. She couldn't have known.
Yes.
No, this is
According to the final.
article sent directly. I have shown you the evidence. This is an article sent directly.
And these
FDR
differ
final
from the ones at the Potsdam Declaration.
This is not the
There's no
Potsdam
mention of the
Declaration.
emperor. in
Order
this.
in the court, guys. Order. I'm going to sustain the objection. Just go on to your next question.
Well, this is. He was present. He had this memorandum. I have.
And your question is, repeat your question, please.
Well, these are no different from the other ones that you wanted to. And you still didn't accept a surrender because you wanted an unconditional surrender. You wanted the American pride to win the
I
war.
think you need to rephrase your question, that these were no different than what the Americans eventually
Exactly.
accepted.
Exactly.
Okay. Can you please ask it?
You can rephrase that question if you wish. I think the jury got the point. You may be seated. Well,
No further.
be careful. Actually, you may
I'm
go
sorry.
lay back
We
down.
didn't get his point.
Goodbye, world.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whatever.
Your next witness, please.
Kim Gu, President of the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea.
Is Kim Gu here? President of the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea.
Hi.
Hello, please introduce yourself.
Order in the court, please.
Okay, so my name is Kim Yu. I'm the president of the Provisional Government of Korean Empire. I was born in Hangwai, Korea in 1876. I witnessed every detail of cruel things Japanese did to us Koreans as I grew up. Ever since Japan invaded Korea by force, I devoted my humble life to Korean independence. When Japanese made it official that Korea is under the rule of Japan in 1910, my life had ended. There is no life for a person who lost their country. I live now not because I struggled to live, but because I happened to survive. And I am glad to stand here with the independence of Korea and the unconditional surrender of Japan.
What is your opinion of the Japanese?
Well, the Japanese were creatures that were worse than beasts. They don't have any kind of national order or laws to begin with. In their society, the people of high status were called samurai. Samurais were privileged to carry swords with them, and they shamelessly murdered, raped, and despoiled without any charge. The idea of superiority of physical power has always been in Japanese mind. Moreover, Japan had a ruler called Denno, who was believed to be the god himself. This ideology of the king's existence as god implemented both false pride and fear in Japanese citizens to obey Denno no matter what. Their superiority led to numerous bloody massacres and raping in both Korea and China.
Please inform us the reason why you're describing Japan in such a tone.
During wartime, it is unacceptable but understandable to see some misbehavior. However, the Japanese had absolutely crossed the line. Japanese killed the people like the value of life meant nothing to them. They massacred 6,000 innocent Korean civilians for being the cause of an earthquake in Japan. Moreover, they built a medical institution in China called Unit 731 to test all disgusting and unspeakable hypotheses on living people. Almost 6,000 innocent people were kidnapped or imprisoned from the war to the library rats for inhumane purposes. The worst part is from Unit 731 was the germ-spreading bombs Japanese dropped in China. Almost 400,000 civilians died from the diseases the bomb carried. Japanese didn't show mercy neither on women nor on children. They killed babies and they threw them away like trash. As for women, they kidnapped young girls, always around like 15, mostly Korean, to be raped repeatedly as sex slaves. They were forced to serve Japanese soldiers and were tortured severely if they disobeyed. The comfort women were killed after being abused to destroy the evidence. And overall, all these actions were officially controlled by the government. Due to this, more than 200,000 women were raped. Overall, since 1937, Japanese murdered nearly 6 million civilian and war prisoners.
So in closing, would you say President Truman's decision was justified?
It was absolutely necessary for President Truman to pursue unconditional surrender of Japanese under any method possible. The main and most important reason why President Truman decided to take such a grand act is because he was worried about his nation and his companions in such an enormous land. It is only normal and absolutely justified to fight for the independence and to fight against potential threat. This decision of his is absolutely justified because we were in war and it had to be ended. Moreover, it is proven through history that such conditions can only be overcome with greater power. President Truman took the safest road to overpower Japan without causing any more damages on both sides.
Thank you. That will be all.
Your witness.
I'm really sorry for the Korean casualties and the many deaths.
Thank you.
So you think that after all of this, you justify Truman's position that it was right to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
I justify it in the sense that finally, since 1910, we were being tortured by Japan, and he finally set an end to it. So yes, I do justify it.
Exactly. So since you were tortured, they get to be tortured.
No, but finally
Doesn't an eye for an eye make the whole world blind?
Sorry, can you please let me talk? No, because in the first place, we were continued to be tortured. From 1937, 6 million deaths were continuing. And if Truman hadn't ended this, then it would have continued and more lives would have continued dying.
Sure. You are an iconic figure in your country who
Yes.
strives for peace and freedom of Korea, correct?
Yes.
Then you are a protector of Koreans and strain for their freedom and life.
Of course.
1 out of 7 casualties were Koreans in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Almost 70,000 Koreans had died that week. How can you supposedly support Mr. Truman, who killed your own people, your own Koreans?
How many? 70,000,
70,000.
right? The Japanese killed 6 million of my people. Can you imagine 6 million and 70,000? There would have been increasing numbers. It would have been more than 70,000 if the war hadn't ended. So that's why a sacrifice had to be made, and I'm sorry for those people, and
Your final
may they
question.
rest in peace.
I'm sorry, but they were ready to give up Korea. They were ready to give freedom to Korea.
And they did.
Exactly. That's all, Your Honor.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
Your next witness.
Lieutenant Richard K. Sutherland.
Lieutenant Richard K. Sutherland.
Could you please state your name and what you contributed to the war?
My name is Richard Karen Sutherland. I was a lieutenant general in the United States Army during World War II and also served during World War I. I had the honor to serve as General Douglas MacArthur's Chief of Staff throughout the war in the Pacific. In my position, I contributed along with many others in the planning of the invasion of Japan known as Operation Downfall. As Chief of Staff, I assisted General MacArthur in the operation and was privileged to stand beside him on board the USS Missouri when Japan surrendered.
How did you view the Japanese Imperial Army?
The Japanese were a strong, determined enemy, willing to sacrifice everything and anything in the service of their emperor. As we witnessed throughout the Pacific, the Japanese would use kamikaze planes as bombs to target the U.S. Navy. For example, April 6, 1945, 10 waves of kamikaze planes were unleashed to try and cripple the U.S. Navy at Okinawa. A total of 355 kamikaze planes were unleashed that day, causing the death of 10,000 American Marines, sailors, and soldiers. The Japanese kamikaze planes sank 300 U.S. ships and crippled another 300. The sheer magnitude of this suicidal onslaught took a heavy mental toll on our sailors, and afterwards many had to be sent home for treatment. These suicidal attacks caused U.S. morale to drop, since we knew then that the Japanese were willing to die rather than to surrender. After the bloody Battle of Okinawa, we now face the horrible truth that every single Japanese soldier and civilian would fight to the death when we invaded their country. I view the Japanese Imperial Army as a ruthless enemy. On Okinawa, our American POWs were routinely mutilated and tortured. Japanese brutality also extended to the local Okinawan civilian population, many of whom were forced to commit suicide. In my opinion, this was not an enemy that valued human life. This was an enemy without morals, without decency, and without humanity. How else can you explain the deliberate torturing and mutilation of our American soldiers who had been captured as prisoners of war?
Do you believe there was any other way to end the war except for a full-scale invasion of Japan known as Operation Downfall?
I believe there were two options. One was to go through with Operation Downfall and suffer all the terrible consequences they would do to the United States. The second option was the one we are discussing, the dropping of the atomic bombs. The dropping of the atomic bombs was the only solution to end the war and save American lives. The Imperial Army and all of Japan were ready to fight until the death. The women and children were being taught how to fight and kill with sharpened bamboo spears, and the men were ready either with guns, knives, or homemade weapons. A full-scale invasion would have severe consequences for the United States. We could expect hundreds of thousands of soldiers to be killed as they fought over every single piece of Japanese land. In addition, an invasion would have prolonged the war for months, maybe even another year. After 4 years of global war, the United States was coming to an end of its resources to fight. Therefore, dropping the bomb was the only solution in order to save American lives and make a quick end to the 4 years of bloody combat.
If Operation Downfall had taken place instead of dropping the bombs, what would have been the consequences of such a risky move?
If Operation Downfall had been initiated, the United States would expect to see two main results. One main would be the casualties. Here's a list of the casualties predicted by some of our generals. According to a letter sent to General LeMay from General Nordstad, he predicted that if an invasion took place, it would cost the U.S. 500,000 dead. In another study done by the Joint Chief of Staffs in April, the chiefs implied that a 90-day Olympic campaign, which is one of the invasion parts, would cost 500,000 casualties, including 110,000 dead or missing. A study done by the Secretary of War, Henry Stimmenstaff, estimated conquering all of Japan would cost 1.7 to 4 million American casualties, including 400,000 to 800,000 fatalities. Then again, dropping the bomb actually saved both Japanese and American lives. The second main consequence would have been a prolonged war, maybe as much as 2 more years of fighting. The best guess came from the Battle of Okinawa as an example. It took the U.S. 82 days to take Okinawa with about 70,000 Japanese soldiers on the island. On the Japanese mainland, counting all the civilians and soldiers still capable of fighting, the resistance would be in the millions. We'd be fighting against a whole population. Remember, it took us 82 days to take the island from 70,000 Japanese soldiers. How long do you think it would take us to occupy Japan that had millions of citizens and soldiers?
Finally, what were the difficulties in planning and trying to capture Japan and make them surrender? Or in other words, how tough was it going to be to invade Japan?
Operation Downfall had two parts, Operation Olympic and Coronet. Staged to be initiated in October 1945, Olympic involved a series of landings that were planned out to capture the island of Kyushu. Operation Coronet was meant to start right after Operation Olympic in March 1946, which was meant to capture Kanto Plain near Tokyo. The invasion date was chosen according to its objectives, troops, redeployment, and to let the Japanese winter pass. However, these operations had many difficulties. Japanese geography made this invasion plan obvious in terms of where the Americans would invade from, and thus allowed the Japanese to make accurate defensive plans. The Japanese planned for an all-out defensive operation of Kyushu, with little left for other defensive maneuvers. Overall, there were 2.3 million Japanese army troops ready to defend the Japanese main islands, another 4 million army and navy soldiers, and a civilian militia of 28 million men and women. Casualties were expected to be very high. The Japanese predicted up to 20 million Japanese deaths, and the situation looked so bleak that we looked to the option of using poison gas in order to decrease the amount of American casualties. When the news of the successful testing of the bomb came out, we knew that was our only option. I am convinced beyond the shadow of doubt that our decision was the correct one for the United States. Our aim was to win a war against a proven, ruthless, and brutal and suicidal enemy. We had shed too much American blood on the sands of Okinawa, Iwo Jima, Saipan, and Guadalcanal. We did what we needed to do to bring the war to a quick end. I'd make the same decision now that I made then. I have no regrets.
Thank you.
Your witness.
You were the Chief of Staff to General Douglas MacArthur from 1941 to 1945, correct?
Yes.
Since you were his Chief of Staff, you took part in every invasion with MacArthur, correct?
Yes, I assisted him.
So you were very experienced with island invasions that the Japanese held, right? Can I have evidence number 4? So the records of General MacArthur's operation from March 11th, 1944 to the 1st of May, 1945 show that the casualty count for the 30 days of the invasion of Kyushu would only be 13,742 U.S. soldiers.
Casualties varied depending on...
This was from General MacArthur's staff, which you were the head of.
Yes.
Yes. So this number is correct then?
Not correct. I predicted it. Other
what
generals made different casualties.
I don't care.
Other
This is
generals
about you.
predicted. Other generals predicted what they wanted to, and I predicted
But
what
not
I
you.
wanted to.
So, in your opinion, the claim that 200,000, 500,000, 1 million, it's an exaggerated value. In your opinion, based on this number right here that you sent to the minutes meeting held on June 18th, 1945.
I wouldn't say over-exaggerated. I would say maybe it's a little high, but not over-exaggerated. It may be a little high. We wouldn't know. We wouldn't know for sure unless we invaded, and we wouldn't want to take the risk.
So it's not fact. Thank you. But this is what you thought. Thank you.
Thank you. You may be seated. Your next witness, please.
call James Burns to the stand.
James Burns to the stand, please. Your witness.
What is your name and what is your position?
My name is James Francis Burns, Secretary of State in the Cabinet of Harry S. Truman from 1945 to 1947.
Why are you defending Truman's actions?
I'm defending Harry Truman because I was Truman's closest foreign policy advisor in 1945. I influenced the decision to use the atomic bomb on Japanese cities. We wanted to restore peace.
Why did you want the atomic bomb to be dropped on Japan?
The reason that we wanted the bomb to be dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima were because we wanted Japan to surrender and give victory to the United States. Also, we were afraid that the Japanese were going to severely bomb anywhere in the United States.
Can you explain about being Truman's advisor on the atomic bomb to the jury?
Yes. I recommended using the atomic bomb as soon as possible in urban areas. Likewise, I stated that no prior warning should be given. However, Truman was generous. I was Truman's representative in the Interim Committee, a group formed to study post-war nuclear issues, which also briefly discussed how the atomic bomb should be used on Japan. At the time, I was very concerned with Russia, and I felt that if Russia would be impressed by the American military actions, we would be able to control Russia in both Europe and Asia. I believe that dropping of the atomic bomb would force the Japanese to surrender and Russia would not get so much in on the kill. I wanted to get through the Japanese fray of the war before the Russians came in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cross-examination.
Hi, Emily.
As well as being a presidential advisor, you were also the director of the Office of War Mobilization, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you, after former President FDR's death, you were temporarily retired, correct?
You're correct.
Okay. In 1945, were you, well, you realized that the position you later obtained was due to a certain conference that you attended, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember which conference that was?
I do. The Yalta Conference.
Okay, thank you. And did you or did you not have your own opinion and ideas about the atomic bomb that you expressed at that conference?
I did have my own opinions, however, I was overruled.
Not only did you try to restrain Russia from expanding in Asia, but also in Europe as well, is that correct?
You are correct.
And you wanted, according to what you told your, do you remember what you told your assistant, Walter Brown, on July 24th, 1945?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay. I quote what you said. After the atomic bomb, Japan will surrender and Russia will not get in so much on the kill. Did you want the Japanese killing all to yourself? In the U.S., I mean?
I'm sorry, I'm old. Could you repeat the question?
Okay. You told your assistant, Walter Brown, on July 24th, 1945, that after the atomic bomb, Japan will surrender and Russia will not get in so much on the kill.
Yes.
Okay. So you wanted the Japanese killing all to yourself, U.S., I mean?
I would say so, yes.
Okay. So were you really trying to end the war or just prove to Russia you were a superpower?
Why would we try to prove Russia to be a superpower? We definitely wanted to end the war.
Yes, but in addition, you also...
That's your final question.
May I please have one more question?
No, that's your final question. You may be
Thank
seated. Your next witness.
We would like to call Ernest Hemingway to the stand, please.
Mr. Ernest Hemingway, you're under oath.
Who are you and why are you in this trial?
I am Ernest Hemingway, a famous writer. I was born in 1899. I am a World War I veteran. I was an ambulance driver in World War I and a news correspondent in the Spanish Civil War. I was also involved in World War II. I went into World War II intelligence work with my brother and son, and later on my wife. We searched for fascist spies in Cuba, patrolled the Caribbean for Nazi submarines, parachuted into occupied France, roamed the battlefields of France after D-Day, and also met secretly with the KGB.
Why are you on the defense team?
Being a World War veteran, I support my president's decisions being that they were made to benefit the country. The fact that I witnessed the horror and violence of war and being the one to drop several bombs justifies my desire for it to end. Even if it ended in a harsh way, it had to end as quickly as possible to prevent further damage. On December 8, 1941, the United States entered World War II. I wanted to take part in naval warfare. While aboard my fishing boat, the Pillar, I patrolled for German submarines off the coasts of Cuba and the United States. I was also hired along with my wife, Martha Gellhorn, as war correspondents for Collier's magazine. What we found was a maddening, intriguing, colorful world of dictators and drunks, scoundrels and socialites, heroes and halfwits.
What is your opinion about the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima?
As I stated in the book Treasury for the Free World, we have waged a war in the most ferocious and ruthless way that it has ever been waged. We waged it against fierce and ruthless enemies that it was necessary to destroy. Now we have destroyed one of our enemies and forced the capitulation of the other. For the moment, we are the strongest power in the world. It is important that we do not become the most hated. We need to study and understand certain basic problems of our world as they were before Hiroshima to be able to continue intelligently, to discover how some of them have changed and how they can be settled justly now that a new weapon has become a property of our world. We must study them more carefully than ever now and remember that no weapon has ever settled a moral problem. It can impose a solution but cannot guarantee it to be a just one. An aggressive war is a great crime against everything good in the world. A defensive war, which must necessarily turn into aggressive at the earliest moment, is the necessary great counter-crime. But never think that war, no matter how necessary nor how justified, is not a crime.
Thank you. Your witness.
You were part of the ambulance corps during World War II, specifically in the European theater, correct?
Sorry?
You were part of the ambulance corps
Yes.
in World War II in the European theater?
Yeah.
Yes. And you must have seen a tremendous number of casualties.
Yes.
And some of them, well, almost all of them were your own people, like your own American Allied soldiers and some other civilians.
Yes.
At what point of time was it justified to murder those civilians that you were treating?
In war, there are always casualties, but it's war. There's casualties on both sides.
I understand, but you're not answering. I'm saying that at what point of time was it?
Unless you're accusing the witness at the stand, they personally killed these people.
I'm
I
going
don't
to
see how it's
sustain
relevant.
the objection. She answered the question.
Okay.
Your next question, please.
Okay, so you say it was justified to kill those people. Similarly, 250,000 people died in the atomic bombings, almost all civilians who had no choice to actually go to war. How is it justified to kill them?
Can you repeat the question?
Is it justified?
To kill the people. To a certain extent.
So you justify that killing civilians who had nothing to do with the war is justified?
Objection. This is speculation by the witness.
That's a leading question. Yes or no?
I think that this witness is here to hear his opinion, but we need to get to the point very quickly.
This is my last question, sir.
Can you repeat it?
Similarly, 250,000 people died in the atomic bombings, almost all civilians who had no choice to volunteer or get in war. They were not soldiers. How is it justified to kill them?
Because if the atomic bomb wasn't dropped, the war would have gone on and more people would have died.
That is wrong.
Thank you. You may be seated. Your next witness, please.
We would like to call to the stand Henry Stimson.
Mr. Henry Stimson to the stand, please.
introduce yourself and tell us what your role in the U.S. government was?
Yes. I was the Secretary of War. I was connected with the major decision-taking of the atomic bomb, and I was directly responsible to President Truman for the Manhattan Project.
Can you please tell the jury what the original purpose of the construction of the atomic bomb was?
Yes. We had information that the Germans were experimenting with atomic fission in 1938. We could not let them be the first to develop an atomic bomb, or it would have changed the outturn of the war. With the construction of it on our part, it would mean that the United States would have an instrument for shortening the war and minimizing destruction. We had strong indications and evidence that the Germans were supplying uranium to the Japanese. Such evidence shows that a German submarine was delivering 560 kilograms of uranium oxide.
Was the atomic bomb from the beginning ever intended for a specific nation?
Oh no, it was absolutely not. The exact circumstances of how the weapon might be used was unknown to any of us until the middle of 1945.
Why do you believe ending the war with the atomic bomb was the most efficient way possible?
Well, the plan that we had before deciding to use the atomic bomb was the following: an intensified sea and air attack, strategic bombing during the fall of 1945, and then on November 1st, an invasion of the southern island. Then in the spring of 1946, an invasion of the main island, Honshu. This plan called for 5 million men to be directly involved, and that was only from the U.S. alone. With this plan carried out, our estimate for the fighting to decrease would be until the end of 1946, and that was only major fighting. The operation would cause millions of casualties to the U.S. and additional losses from our allies. All of this is within the scenario that we would succeed and Japan would surrender. If they did surrender, we could predict that our enemy's casualties would be much larger from our previous combat experiences. After all this planning, there was still the question if it would work, if Japan would surrender. We wanted an option that would ensure immediate victory and to stop the Japanese military forces.
Your final question, please.
Do you believe that the Japanese were given a fair enough warning?
Yes. The ultimatum given at the Potsdam Conference was very clear, and in no way did it oppress the Japanese citizens on our part. It promised destruction if Japanese resisted and hope if they surrendered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your witness.
As the Secretary of War, isn't your primary duty to ensure peace before war?
There was already a war going on, so I wanted to stop it.
I'm asking in general.
Okay.
Is it peace is
Yes.
always the first option? Then, even when a war is going on, you should be looking for opportunities to make the other person surrender.
To
ensure peace, even in war, you should be looking at opportunities. Right?
Yes.
Were there any with Japan? Or did you know that they were ready to surrender?
No, that's why we knew that the atomic bomb was the best option.
The witness keeps lying. The defense witness keeps lying. Can I have evidence number 3?
Evidence 3.
Yes. Can I explain that?
Quick, yes.
This is the magic diplomacy where the U.S. officials were located in Pearl Harbor, and they would intercept Japanese messages, translate them into English, and send them to the War Department, and obviously the Secretary of War would be knowing about it. Can you please read that?
All of it? We consider the maintenance of peace in East Asia to be one aspect of the maintenance of world peace. Accordingly, Japan, as proposal for ending the war and because of her concern for the establishment and maintenance of lasting peace, has absolutely no idea of annexing or holding the territories which she occupied during the war.
Now, very briefly and quickly, What else do you want from the nation of Japan other than give up their territories?
They weren't ready to give up their territories. And may I read you an information that I...
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The vague proposals contemplated the retention by Japanese of important conquered areas and were therefore not considered seriously.
They never. This is a different one. This is a translated peace message sent. Anyways, I'll carry on. And the nation was suffering from starvation and bombings, and if your primary duty to ensure peace, you should have started peace negotiations right away when you knew, even if they were, like you said, just jokingly.
We did try we did give them an opportunity to surrender, as you know, with the Potsdam.
Exactly, that's where I'm getting to.
Yes.
And it insisted on unconditional surrender. Can I have evidence number 4? Can you please read that from If Today?
Okay. Will attack repentantly. From If, okay. If today, when we are still maintaining our strength, the Anglo-Americans were to have regard for Japan's honor and existence, they could have humanity by bridging the war to an end. If, however, they insist unrelentingly upon unconditional surrender, the Japanese were unanimous in their resolve to wage a thorough going war.
So this proves my point that the only obstacle was an unnecessary, unconditional surrender, which was against. Please,
At the top, it says that the document has been found in 2005. And that's
Yes, but it was printed prior to 1950, and so we will admit it. Do you have one final question?
This is not. I'm done. This is my last. So the only obstacle was an unconditional surrender, which seemed so important to you that you suggested, Mr. Truman, to kill 250,000 lives and have established America as a superpower for the rest of the years coming. That's all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Your next witness.
We would like to call to the stand Mrs. Harry S. Truman, First Lady.
Mrs. Harry S. Truman, the wife of the President.
Hello.
Your witness.
Please introduce yourself and tell us why you're here today.
I'm Elizabeth Truman, President Truman's wife, and I'm here to support my husband in his time of need and help prove his innocence.